Okay, let's go. So here we are. We're at 4a Dalet Amud Aleph. Let's just quickly review some things came up after the shir, which I just wanted to explain. So, these halachos of speaking, saying only the right thing, saying only like positive things, speaking in a refined fashion. Where do we define this? Is this like absolute black and white law that you can't say anything negative? Like if you had to always say the word good or bad, well, good is 3-4 letters, and bad, I don't know. Do you look at constant, how do you define these things? So it's worth noting that many point out that the Rambam, when he relates these halachos, he puts them in Hilchos Deos. Hilchos Deos is a section of what we'll call like good practice, as opposed to this is black on white. So what this is now again, to say things which are truly, crass, that would be a violation of halacha. But to say like good, it's not light outside as opposed to saying it's dark outside. That is not halacha. That is good practice. Okay, but it's a beautiful good practice to always try to focus on the good. Okay, so that's one thing I wanted to emphasize. This is not straight halacha. This is good practice. Excellent efforts to have to always try to find a positive way to say things. Now, the other thing I want to emphasize, talk about is that this notion of not telling someone when someone passed away was the other thing we spoke about last time. So that actually is codified. It's codified in the Shulchan Aruch saying you don't tell people about bad news. Now, you'll notice that, I don't know, Baltimore Jewish news or whatever it is, like a Baltimore Scoop and all that, they do share this news. We do tell this to people, and that's, the later poskim say, okay, we should tell it, the Avel, first of all, the halacha is you don't even tell the mourner about the passing of their loved one because of this, okay? Now, you really have to wonder, like, hey, nowadays, like, of course, someone's going to call them, but back in the day, that was a big deal. Like, they may not know. You're the one who just traveled from their city. Like, we'll see the story. We're going to review that story again. They may not know that. And the halacha is, yeah, that's fine. You don't tell them. It's better not to tell them. Now, again, the later post can say no, because people want to know. The Avel, the mourner, wants to know because they want to say Kaddish. The individuals want to know because they want to do Nicham Avelim. So we do share this news, but to recognize, like, the starting point is we don't say it at all, right? And by the way, it's worth mentioning, there have been scenarios, even in more modern history, a famous story of Rav Ruderman, the first Rosh Yeshiva of Israel, whose mother passed away when he was in Slobodka. It was impossible for him to get back. Now, back in the day, you didn't go home for a parent's burial. You'd miss it by a week or 2 or 3, right? Because travel took a while. So the only question is sitting Shiva at a later point, and the story, and the story may be very unsettling, but this Rosh Yeshiva held the news from him until the end of the Zman, until the end of, he felt like, what's the benefit of him knowing this news right now? One could argue if that was the right thing to do or not, but his point was, what would be the benefit of him knowing this information right now? He's not going to the funeral. He has to shiva at some point. He has to know before he goes home. I'm not going to tell him right now because he didn't want to disturb his learning. Okay, now just putting it out there. I'm not as a judgment call, but that was what happened. Okay, that said, let's now learn. Let's go over the story that we went through a little bit too quickly yesterday. So Dalet Amud Aleph at the top of the page. Rav Barachua de Rabbi Chia. So Rav was the son of Rav Chia's brother, Uvar Achte, and he was also the son of Rav Chia's sister. Now that doesn't sound right. The point is that they're both step-sisters from different parents. In other words, siblings from different parents, right? So in other words, they're not related whatsoever, right? In other words, you could have someone who had a daughter from a previous marriage, and then, and someone has a son from a marriage, and then their spouses die, and then the parents marry each other. So there's no blood relationship whatsoever. So they marry each other. Okay, it happens. Keep in mind, back in the day, every one of your ancestors married each other. Just putting it out there. Hey, let's be honest. Fine. So bottom line is, when Rav went there to Eretz Yisrael, Amrlahu Avu Kayim. Rav Chia, who was again asked him, is Avu alive? Okay, so this is Rav's father. Amrle Ima Kayemes. So Rav said, is Ima alive? Which is his mother and also Rav Chia's sister. Amrle Ima Kayemes. Rav Chia said, so is Ima alive? Meaning, is my sister alive? Amrle Ivu Kayam. Rav said, is father alive? Is your brother alive? Ivu? Amrle L'Shameh. So understanding what happened, Rav Chia turns to his attendant and says, Chalotz li minalai, take off my shoes. This is a sign of mourning. In other words, the idea that we put on like Crocs and all these different types of shoes, they didn't have alternative shoes. When we say like on Tisha B'Av, Yom Kippur morning, they didn't wear shoes. They didn't have like the notion of having you see Gemaras, they didn't have a second pair of clothing. They didn't have a second pair of shoes. That'd be insane, right? So what they did during mornings, they took off their shoes. So he takes off his shoes, and then he says, take my clothing with me. We're going to the bathhouse. That seems to be a contradiction, right? If you're mourning, you don't go to the bathhouse. So what's going on? So let's see. Shema mina salas. We learned 3 things. Shema mina aval asher b'nilas saddle. First of all, we learned that a mourner is not allowed to wear shoes. Again, we bypass that by wearing non-leather shoes because halachically shoes are seen as the comfortable leather shoes. But again, back in the day, they didn't wear shoes at all. That's one. Shema mina shmua rechoka in heges el yom echad. If you hear about mourning at a shmur rechoka, at a delayed report, then you only wait 1 day. You only mourn 1 day. In other words, if a person, and this happened all the time back in the day, if a person only hears about someone's passing after 30 days, then you only mourn for 1 day. Only mourn for one day, meaning 30 days after they pass. This actually tragically happened in recent, during this time. If someone finds out that they passed away in Gaza, or whatever it's going to be, then they would only really mourn for a single day, okay? Because it's a shmur rechok as long as it's 30 days after the passing, okay? Ushma mina, mixas yom kikul. The last part is the fact that we learned that a part of the day is like the whole day. There are a number of halachos, like for example, the seventh day of Shiva, everyone knows, the seventh day of Shiva, when does it end? It ends in the morning. Why? Because we have a principle, mixas hayom kikulo. For certain things, as long as you did part of the day, it's like you did the whole day. And therefore, that's what's happening over here. Rav Chia says, take my shoes off. I mourned. As soon as you did that, mixas yom kikulo, part of the day is like the whole day. Then that's why he tells his attendant afterwards, he wants to teach his students, now let's go to the bathhouse, to show that the morning is over. It's a momentary, short avelus, and then it's over. Okay? Shabbos is over after a certain halachos. Yeah, yes.
Sorry, the shoe thing. So, are you supposed to daven with shoes on?
You are ideally supposed to have with shoes on. Yeah.
Like leather, comfortable, nice?
No. You're supposed to have something on your feet. It's more about the reason we wear shoes on for davening is more about respectful, like what we would wear in a public, in a setting. So, correct. Okay. So, other examples of things that we could see from a person's speech. Hayid Amar Dunu Dini, a person who would always say, "Judge my case in court." The people are very, like going to lawyers. Everything happens. Oh, I'm going to call my lawyer. I'm going to call a lawyer. One of those types of people. Amri, they said about him, Shmamina Midan Kaasi. It must be that he comes from the generation, the tribe of Dan. Dan will judge his people. It's one of the tribes of Israel. So in other words, you see a lot, but the point is you can learn a lot from the way people speak, right? It gives us a certain insight. So a person always says, I'm going to take you to court. They're probably from the tribe of Dan, who is very into judging. That's one of the things, their attributes. There's a person who would go around saying, Akef Yama Asisne Berasa. I don't know what the context of the conversation was, but he would say, on the seashore, I will establish a palace. Okay? You would always talk about the palaces he wants to put at the seashore. It turns out that he comes from the tribe of Zvulun. It says about Zvulun, Zvulun l'chof yamim mishkan. Zvulun will dwell by the seashores. Okay, so again, you see things from a person's speech. Okay, now the Gemara goes back to our conversation. Now that we've established that everyone, Rav Huna, Rav Yehuda both hold that, Rav Yehuda and Rav Meir both hold, Rav Huna and Rav Yehuda both hold that or means night, right? The way we interpret our Mishnah means you do B'dikas Chametz when? The night before Pesach. Nobody holds you do it in the day, right? Established. Says the Gemara, Michti, however, Mir-bein l'Rabbi Yehuda vein l'Rab Meir. According to Rabbi Yehuda and Meir, which we're going to see in a Mishnah in a few days, chametz ina asur misheshos l'mala. Mideoraisa, biblically, you are allowed to eat chametz until midday on Erev Pesach. Right? Rabbinically, we'll see there's a debate, how much earlier than midday do we stop eating chametz? But biblically, it's from midday, okay? So, v'nivdak b'shis, why don't we go ahead and do b'dikas chametz, I'm going to translate a little bit differently than it says over here, but in a way, in the morning, in a way that will be done, make sure that we're done doing the b'dikas chametz by midday. In other words, the Gemara is asking, what's going on over here? Why do we do b'dikas chametz at night? Why not do it in the morning? Why do we have to go through, it's a busy enough thing. In the morning, bottom line is you have to make sure that you don't own any chametz by midday, because that's when you can't eat it, biblically. Okay, so do b'dikas chametz in the morning. Make sure you're done by midday. Call it a day. Why are you doing b'dikas chametz the night before? Says the Gemara, and maybe you'll tell me it's because of a principle that whenever we have a mitzvah, we want to do it as early as possible. The concept is zrizin makdim l'mitzvos, that we want to be zealous, right? We do it early. Nivdok mitzafra. Still, you could check first thing in the morning. Dichsiv, as it says, the pasuk says that you do bris milah on the eighth day. On the eighth day, right? Bris milah takes place on the eighth day. V'tani, we taught in the brayso. Kol yom kulo kashel milah. The entire day is valid for bris milah. Elish is zrizim makdim and mitzvos, but you should do it earlier in the day because of zrizim makdim and mitzvos. Shnemar v'yashkim Avram aboker, because the pasuk says Avram arose early in the morning. So you see, when we do zrizus, when we want to do something early, early means do it earlier in the day. It doesn't mean do it the night before. We don't have to go that far back. Okay. By the way, parenthetically, we learn over here that a bris milah, there's a bit of interest. There's an emphasis on doing it earlier in the day. That said, it's not so clear exactly what the parameters are. I remember a while ago, there's someone in our shul who wanted to do a bris milah on Shabbos afternoon, and part of the family said it's aser, but based on this Gemara, it says you have to do it early in the morning. So I called him Nutza Greenblatt, who was one of my favorite people to call. He was just like, I don't know, we'll talk about him for a long time later, but not now. But basically, he said, I don't understand. He said, does everyone do bris milah as a Neitzach Hama? Everyone does it. Does the family want to do it at 5:15 a.m. on in the morning? I said, probably nice. I said, what are you talking about? He said, yeah, it's nice if you want to do it in the morning. He said, do it in the afternoon, no problem. He was very whatever. He had a very sharp way of speaking. So fine, they did their bris milah in Shabbos afternoon. But the bottom line is fine. There's an emphasis doing it early, but even early never means doing it the night before. right? When it says Avram got up to go to the Akedah, it says Avram had to go to the Akedah on that day. So what does he do it? He wakes up early. You wake up early in the morning. You do it early. That's even if it's reason to make the mitzvahs, which is not a chiyuv, it's not an obligation. It's like a nice thing. You do it early in the morning, but you don't go the night before. Okay, so then the Gemara is again asking, why are we doing B'dikas Chametz at night? Why not just do it in the morning? The reason is actually more fundamental. It's because, first of all, people are home. People need to be home in order for B'dikas Chametz to take place. Or haner yafla b'dika. Also, you want to do a good b'dika, the candle helps. The candle helps because in dark crevices, you want to be able to have the candle and the candle to help you search. And therefore, during the nighttime, when the candle is actually going to be more effective, it's actually going to be a better time to look. So therefore, the Gemara is saying it's not just a matter of doing it early. Is that there's two benefits. One is people are around. You need to have people around in order to ensure that the b'dika is going to take place. And B, the fact is that the candle is going to be more effective for the searching. Fine. Amar Abaye therefore says Hilkach. Therefore, Haitzur b'mirabanan, a Torah scholar. There's two possibilities. One possibility was that the reason we do B'dikas Chametz the night before is because of its reason Makdim Mitzvos. We rejected that. Now we're saying the reason is because there's something intrinsic there. It's a better time to do searching. A, because people are there. B, because the candle is going to be more effective. If that's the case, L'liftach be'idnei, a person should not begin his appointed Torah study, be'orta d'tleisar, d'nagi arbesar, the evening of the 13th before the 14th. In other words, for the little time before, different opinions, but the time before, as you get to nightfall, when you get to nightfall, you should not be learning. You should not be learning. Why? Dilma mashcha leishmaita, because you might get into your learning and it'll extend. Va'asilam doing mitzvah, you're going to neglect the mitzvah of searching for the chametz. So it's usher to learn in the lead up to b'dikas chametz, the time leading up to b'dikas chametz. Certainly not from tzeisa kuchavim, certainly not from nightfall and on. It would be usher to learn. The poskim points out, if it's usher to learn, guess what? It's certainly usher to watch a TV show. It's certainly usher to eat your meal. In other words, anything that could bring you in, anything that you could get lost in, a good book, whatever it's going to be, usher. Right? Learning is the even learning. We're saying even learning, but so too other things. So night of B'dikas Chametz is important. People, whatever, I'm going to go out, I'm going to do a whole bunch of stuff. No. We have B'dikas Chametz, you have to do in the beginning of the night. If you're not able to in the beginning of the night, there's a general rule for all these types of things. You could put an alarm as a reminder. Okay, so that comes up for, candle lighting, let's say, is another time when this comes up. You have to do it right away in the beginning of the night. If you're not able to do that, you have to set up some reminder for yourself. So either a friend who could remind you, or you set up an alarm. But absent that, you really should be doing it. You should not be sitting down for a dinner. I'll do B'dikas Chametz at 12 o'clock. No, you do it as soon as it's night. Was there a hand? Yeah.
Yeah, I was curious. The where people are home and that's a reason that's more practical. Did we say that it was according to the Torah you have to use a candle? Or the same?
It's no.
That's a weak reason.
Well, it's saying if you want to do a good bedika, then you want to do a good with a time you could do a good search, and the candle's going to.
With a candle, it's going to be better than when it's daytime and you can actually see.
It could. Well, it could. I hear.
Also, Bedika as a whole is Darabana, right?
Correct. Why? But why are we saying it's so right? So why? I'm missing something.
I'm just saying, it seems like if there's no premise that it has to be at a certain time, you got to do it before, then the morning would be a much better search.
Okay, you're saying there seems to be an emphasis on a candle, which seems to be giving more weight than you would assume. In other words,
and that's especially more applicable then because they didn't have. All you had is a candle, or you have the sunlight. So the sunlight is way better.
Yes and no. Keep in mind, it's not going to be better in darker meaning
but
you're.
You could use both. You could have the sunlight illuminate the whole house. And
right.
If it's dark,
Right. You're still going to need the light. Meaning they didn't have lights in their house. They're still going to need a light, and the argument is the light is going to be more effective seeing a contrast maybe when it's darker. I don't know if that's entirely true, but that was my understanding of it always. That granted you could use a candle in the daytime, but the candle is going to be maybe more effective in seeing things in some way, like seeing the contrast when you're actually doing it at night. That's what it seems to be saying.
Right, but we don't have to worry about crumbs.
Okay, I hear. But we do still look for crumbs, right? Even though we don't have to worry. Okay.
We're compelling the timing.
I hear. Okay, let's go further. We asked Rav Nachman Yitzchak the following question. Okay, question comes up all the time. People rent their house. I did it this year myself. Rented my house out for Pesach. Okay, so what happens? Whose responsibility? And I rented a house from Pesach. Whose responsibility is it to do B'dikas Chametz? Right? So let's see. Hamasker ba'is l'chaver ba'ba'as. A person rents their house on the 14th of Nisan. Here we're talking about a person who starts the rental on Erev Pesach. Al mi livdok. Whose responsibility is it to search? Al masker livdok. Is it the landlord? The chamira didehu. Because the chametz, the house, belongs to the landlord. Or dilma lasocher livdok. Or is it the tenant? Because the service shusakai. Because the prohibited items are found in the person's domain. Tashma. The Gemara tries to bring a raya proof from mizuzah. Hamasker ba'is l'chaver. A person rents a house to their friends. Al lasocher laslo mizuzah. The tenant is the one who is obligated to put up the mezuzah, right? So if you're the renter, you rent your house, right? So think, I don't know, you rent your house in Pickwick. The owners are Jewish, but it's your responsibility to put up the mezuzah. Straightforward. So therefore, it should be the renter's responsibility to do b'dikas chametz. It says what? Hasam ha'amar misharshia mezuzah chavas hadarhi. Putting the mezuzah is uniquely obligated to the resident. Okay, why? He doesn't really explain himself, but some of the Rashi explains two reasons. One is because the